All right. Welcome, everybody. We are back. This is the B2B Growth Lab. We meet every week to wrestle with what it looks like to have a business, to grow a business, to be living, working inside of not only our businesses, but our clients, and kind of report back to you the processes that they seem repetitive, but every single deployment's a little bit different. Probably because people are involved as the customers, as the team members, and that's kind of the foundation of today's topic, titled Leading Like a Shield, Protecting Your Team from Organizational Chaos, but really subtitled from if you're not growing, you're stagnant, and if you are growing, there's organizational chaos, period. Right? It is a given. I ski regularly. It never ceases to surprise or amaze me where I'll go back to the same hill and go down the same run I was down 2 days ago, and the conditions have changed.
Huh.
Right? It's like not the same. I don't bother memorizing it because it will change. And I think embracing chaos and recognizing it as a part of the process is maybe one of the most important things you can do. But teams work better when the leadership is there to announce that fact, to absorb it, to help distinguish between what's on purpose and what's a distraction, and protect people. There are swings in strategy, there are shifts in focus, and if somebody isn't there to say, hey, this is the direction we're going in, and how we plan to get there, and how are we doing this week, this day, this time, this minute, then things aren't going to work so well. You have to keep on adjusting. So I think today we're going to talk about how to advocate for your people while aligning with the priorities, how to stay productive, engaged, and how when you take care of them, you get loyalty in return. We want to talk about how organizational chaos can turn into turbulence, how leadership actually helps us deal with this stuff, and how to shield without siloing so that support looks like, let's handle this and not go sit in that corner. So, yeah, really, I think it all comes down to a common theme that we have, which is culture. Where would you like to start tackling this?
This is a dimension of culture, but really it's more practical, tactical than that. It's not as hard to do as people would think. You could have just called this episode Change Management 101 in organizations, right? Because the through line of all the change management philosophies, right? If we said ProSize ADKAR, we said Kubler-Ross, we said Lewins, right? We could go through all of them. The through line through all of them is the communication that you mentioned, Jacob. It's where are we going? Why do you care? Why are we going that way? Right? Like, it's just giving them some messaging so they can understand the where, the why, the who, the when, right? Like, and then doing your best as the leader to change that messaging the least amount possible and own it emotionally, authentically, when necessary. So everyone's going to experience some grief and disappointment from wasted labor, right? So you're mid-stroke on an implementation and you change direction and say, we're not going to use this ATS, we're going to use this one instead. We need you to start over. Right. So you could just say the practical part of that. That's the facts. But the reality is they will experience that as chaos, recognize it as chaos, and empathize with them, appreciate the work they've done to this point, respect them for what they have done, lever that as lessons to apply as we change direction. You've already been through this once, right? Now I know you can do it. Our implementation should go even more quickly in this new direction. And then open the dang door and ask some questions, or let them ask questions, right? Like, what else can I tell you? What else do you want to know?
Yeah.
Right? So it's a robust dialogue. Use whatever change methodology you buy into, right? They're all pretty good, but you got to have conversations with people. You got to listen. You got to engage them as human beings to help them solve the chaos for themselves, right? You can't stop the chaos, but you got to help them accept it, process it, and move forward with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've been having some, well, let's just call them dev meetings, because we're doing some new configurations and some builds and testing some stuff. And so that the technical team's been meeting. And inside of that environment, I've been working to be very cognizant. One of the new people in the team is super eager. And so the conversation always involves the e-break. I'm like, look at it, come back to the next meeting and say, why this, why that, why the other, before you build, right? And it's this distinction that I was taught a while ago, but it's an application that I'm training somebody else in, which is the difference between reacting and responding, right? Especially because the inputs aren't pure technical, right? It's just like, here's the map, but it's like, okay, but now we need to make the machine facilitate it. And before we facilitate it, let's take a look at what outcome we want, because you don't want to facilitate something just because somebody said make it so in step 1. It's like, okay, but what's the step 10 result? And what I'm learning inside of that process is that's a conversation that needs to be had for step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a continuous training process of like, before we build it, let's think about why. And yeah, that's the stuff that seems to have really moved this person forward, because I'm instilling in her my confidence in her competence.
Right.
Well, I love that phrase, your confidence in her competence. That's a really powerful turn of phrase. And I think that the other part of this is that you're giving her the opportunity to connect the dots herself by saying, this is where we are, this is where we want to be. You may find that given her experience, she has a better path to get you where you want to be, and you don't know it. But the only way that you can discover that is by trusting her with the information. This is where we are, this is where we want to be. How can we get there?
And to be completely honest, in the hiring, I tell people that, right? Like, you're coming in because I want to pay you to think. I use the word pay to think a lot, but that doesn't assume they know what I mean until much later.
It's like we're back at the last episode, right? Like, how not to micromanage, right? This is why not to micromanage.
Yeah.
Well, and
listen, right? Go ahead, Zach.
Well, it's such an easy habit to fall into, right? Especially for top performers, because the people that are managers and top performers, they typically are in that role because they've had some good ideas in the past. And it can be very, very difficult for us to let go of my way is the right way to do things, right? And that's really hard.
I find this in team and founders too. I did a presentation this morning, and one of the things that was in it was the reliance on hero employees, which, may get you from startup, but it won't get you past whatever that phase into scaling, because you're not going to find 3. hero employees. That's why they're heroes.
Right.
Right. And so, if you're not able to work with that person, define the role, fulfill it, figure out the right way. I love some of the stuff you said, Rob, which is like, just because they're awesome at it doesn't mean they should become the manager of. And, put those pieces together, because it does take a team to get that ball in the net. If it worked any other way, you'd see these football clubs be like, we've got one guy on the pitch today. He'll take care of it. And like, clearly it doesn't.
The military knows this very well.
Right.
The first ad on the team is the greatest force multiplier. We two together are equivalent to at least 3 people worth of performance. Right? You get more than one whole ad by adding the second one. Right? It's wild. And that number continues to be awesome until you get to about 5. So at 4, we close the fire team and you start the next fire team, right? So,
right.
So yes, absolutely yes, right? We go as a team. Everyone's valuable, right? Like, bring your piece. I will not squelch your voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me where I'm wrong. What am I missing, right? What are we missing? How will this go badly for us? What will the naysayers in the next meeting we go to say about this, right? Let's have the counter arguments for that, right? Diligence,
Mm-hmm.
like team think. Yes, let's go. It's not just my way is the highway. If you behave that way, you take all the responsibility, all the blame, right? And your team behind you is not supporting you. They're just complying.
It reminds me of the characters in the movies, right? There's such a vast difference between the boot camp guy and the in the field guy, right? Completely different behaviors.
I went and saw last night one of my prior employees. They were in a band, right? They haven't worked together in like 6 years. And I went last night. He was playing drums, and I'm sitting at the table in the crowd with my wife. And when he has time, he comes up and, hey, Rob, gives me a hug, right? The first thing out of his mouth was, you're the only boss I ever had that made work tolerable. That's how bad the state of organizational chaos and leadership is in corporate America.
Right.
And I said, well, thank you, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, just, I haven't told them yet, but no problem telling you, I'm checking out. Like, peace. And I said, well, good for you, right? Good for you. Hope you're going of your own will to the place where you want, right? Like, yeah. Yeah. They just, organizations don't understand. If the culture is what they tolerate, and if what they tolerate is chaos, they move the goalpost every 2 weeks and then gaslight people for not delivering, right? Like,
Right.
Well, we did deliver. We delivered 20% 10 times. That's what we did, right? It's just, the dysfunction is wild. It's just wild. And yeah, if corporate America is not careful, the trend towards small business, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, the gig economy will continue and possibly even hasten more as the generations transition.
The beatings will continue until morale improves, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that in a movie too. They were rowing.
Yes. Rob, you brought something up that I thought was interesting, and I would like more clarity on it. You talked about team think. I know that in communications, we talk about group think and how group think is bad because it creates monolith of thought. So
Right.
I'd like you to, if possible, Can you describe the difference between team think and group think? I think that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah, the mindset of every person being valuable and being open to challenge. Indeed, people experiencing the psychological safety to express dissent. And the leader leans into it and says, interesting, tell me more. All right, how would that work? All right, what would the impact be? Oh, like let's really vet that. Oh, that's awesome. Right? Thanks for bringing that up. Super valuable. What else? Right? Like that's the antidote to groupthink. Right? That's the antidote to it. So the leader's responsible for it in that room. What are we missing? Challenge me, right? Like I want us to be successful. You could get really geeky about it and say applied theory of constraints. We're only as strong as our weakest member in the room. So everyone's expected to bring their full voice, right? You can neck it down and go through each of their specialties. All right, let's explore this from the perspective of the learning management system. Let's go from the perspective of leadership development. Let's go from the perspective of e-learning and technical training, right? Like I want the holistic perspective because each of you has those specialties, right? That's just my own selfish example of how I led my teams. So yeah, they all knew, challenge me, right? What are we missing? I want us to be successful. I win when you win, right? Like my job is not to be the performer. My job is to get the performance out of the people.
So then is it fair to say that team think is everybody orienting their unique skill sets around one goal to achieve that goal, whereas groupthink is everybody sublimating their unique skill sets to become one mindset? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, good.
We see this all the time inside of operations. All the time. And like I'm just going to lean on a really simple example that was handed to me. So recently I saw a granular breakdown, and again, like the presenters are like, this is our data from 86 companies in 2025 between 10 million and 1 billion. And what I love about it is you get way into the weeds, you see all the really, really complicated stuff and all the little data points and all this stuff, which is where we're providing our service. But then to summarize it, Buddy just kind of flipped it over and he's like, out of this, there's an intense resource focus, and then this is an afterthought. And the language was super clear, but the visual was even more perfect. Because on this side of the slide was a soccer field, and on this side of the slide was Picasso soccer field. Everything was just slanted and at weird angles. And he's like, this is what it looks like. And, you know, I think like if I had a company of a certain size, I would just pin that up in every single room beside every workstation and be like, have you seen this? Because everybody can describe where that's happening inside of their role on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think that the question then becomes, what is the impact of them seeing it but not acting? And as leaders, what do we need to do to connect that through line of making that recognition and then taking action?
That question needs to be answered first, or your first question doesn't matter, right?
So in your one-on-one meetings with your team members, right? There's the context, there's the psychological safety. Open that door. What else do you need to know? What else can I tell you? And if I can't, then I'll just flatly say, right? The executives has asked us not to discuss that yet. We'll have an answer in a few weeks. Sometimes that's true. When you give that kind of truth, rather than dance around it and try and lie your way through it and all that other gaming and right. They know it's a game when it's a game, and they know it's honest when it's honest.
So how would you suggest implementing the Kaizen, right? Because everybody's heard the example, or at least read, like at Toyota, a janitor can give a suggestion, but it's got to be something a lot more functional than a suggestion box, right?
How do those go bad, right?
Yeah.
You need to be careful. Somebody was threatened by that suggestion. Okay. Tickets that just pile up on the Kaizen board. They're so numerous, no one ever triages them and processes them. They like never get parsed, right? There's 400 sticky notes on that Kaizen board. Okay. At some point you have to get focus, and you got to process them and do something with them. Otherwise it's a farce, right? So there's all kind of ways it goes wrong. So I'm a big fan of how do you do Kaizen idea generation without putting names on there and people being threatened, right? And persecuted, prosecuted, retaliated against, right? Because you want to give them credit for the idea, but not for the specifics. I don't know how you bridge that, but you need the input from the people. I used to walk around with a pocket full of vending machine dollars, useful like real money, but not real money. And when you're on the factory floor, when you wanted information, you just paid for it. Literally.
Yeah.
Where do you think this paint chip comes from? I think it comes from blankety blank. Here's $5. Thanks so much. They're happy. Right? I just paid for information. They got to feel good about it. They didn't have to put it on a Kaizen board, right? They just get in there, walk around, hand out some money, ask some questions. You'd be amazed at the ideas that show up, right? How would you fix that? Thank you so much. Here's $20.
It sounds like what you're doing is disconnecting the emotion of the recommendation by paying for it and turning it into a transaction. And I think that for a lot of people, when it comes to something like Kaizen, that feels almost too sterile. Like it's got to be this noble thing. And it's like, well, not really. Like it's a transaction in the first place. If you're paying for it, great. If it's getting you the result that you want. So I think that, I think that's actually really smart, is transactionalizing that bit, because then people don't get offended, right? You only get offended when things become emotionally charged.
I would say yes, and right, the safety of it. How much safer does it get psychologically when some stranger from nowhere shows up with a fistful of money and asks for your help? Right? Can you help me? It's hard to be less threatening than that, right? Unless you're just a complete untrustworthy piece of crap, right? Because but can you help me? We're trying to solve this problem, and I think you might know something valuable. Okay, I just need 30 seconds, right? Ask them a few questions, point me in the right direction. And then when you're done and you solve it, every single person who you got help from, they all get the win at the end. This team helped me solve this. Without their input, I could not have done it.
I think there's something really important you're talking about too, which is meeting them where they are at.
Yes.
Because when you take them out of that environment and it's not 30 seconds and it's 30 minutes and they have to go upstairs and around the corner over here and into this room and grab a chair and then raise their hand to tell you what the thing is, or go and stand in front of everybody else, or right? Like, what is that? 17 friction points?
Right. So Gemba walk, right? Like, just but intent and a little bit of resources, and voila, we save multiple minutes plus paint cost, improve process workflow time, right? Like ding to ding, boatloads of dollars on the bottom line. And all it took was $100 worth of vending machine cash and a half an hour of my time. Right? It's talk to people, listen to people, stop telling, get curious, answer their stinking questions, right? They know where the bodies are buried. They know where they need a new tool. They know where the chaos is that is making their job hard every day. Well, if you just replace these rollers, or you just put rubber on the blankety blank, or you just got me a new whatever, they'll tell you. If Rob, you just told us where we were going, I'd be able to adjust the LMS to do that. All right, fair. Here's where we're going, right? Like,
well, and I think the tricky part of this is that for a lot of managers, they're doing their job, right, plus managing the team.
Right.
And so for a lot of them, they're stretched thin, and it's very difficult for them to find the time to do something like this.
Right.
To walk the factory floor with $100 in their pocket and just ask questions and give people money. And that's one of the things that I think companies do that actually gets in their way more than they realize, is giving managers a job plus management instead of looking at management as a job in and of itself.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we can go into all the theory to validate exactly what you're saying, but let's just say yes, absolutely. There's a few dependencies we have to consider, right? How many customer service representatives on the phone could you manage at one time? Well, level of task and degree of duplication, you could have 30 of them and lead them effectively. On the training team, you have 8 people all doing vastly different functions at higher levels. 8's about the limit.
Yeah.
Right? 8's about the limit. So you get even higher, how many people could report to the CEO? Well, if the CEO has 8 direct reports, they're probably not leading them all effectively. That number is probably more like 3 to 5. Right? It's different. It's different.
Well, and I think a lot of companies, they get trapped in this lie that they are resource strapped, that they are constrained by money. And the fact of the matter is that you can find the money. If it's a problem that you really believe is big enough and painful enough, you'll find the money. And I think that that's where this issue is coming from, is that a lot of businesses don't recognize just the level of impact that these problems are having on them.
Oh, they just
quite frankly, it's millions of dollars.
Yes.
Every year. Yes. That is being caused by mismanagement.
Yes.
And it's not something that shows up on a stat sheet or a quant sheet. It's harder to quantify, but it's absolutely there. And by bringing in someone like a Rob or a Zach or a Jacob to resolve some of these issues, you'll make back far more than you spent.
Far more. The ROI, it's some of these solutions are 25x, 30x, right? Where else are you going to get 25x? Give me a break.
Absolutely.
Just if you had a money machine, you could put $1 in and get $25 out tomorrow. You would put $1 in it, right? But instead they say that can't be true. Well, or it is, right? Or the research has been done and it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just wild. Playbook, narratives, lack of reason. Right?
Ego. People feeling afraid.
A lot. It's no coincidence that humility is the most endearing leadership character trait when you do character model development for leaders.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone puts humility at the top. That's what they want. So, yeah, people got a lot to learn. Solving the chaos, right? You can't see it all.
That's one of the core concepts. There's that willingness to learn. And so maybe something to talk about that we haven't necessarily touched on directly or specifically is, you've talked a lot in the past about coaching like down, like managers should be coaching team, but obviously somebody should be coaching the managers, right? So that can be passed through the organization. And I do believe I have heard you mention it before, but one of my mentors worked inside of a company that did quite well. They went public at 6.4 billion. And the fundamental thing was the culture. And in my opinion, they created one of the best middle management training programs out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what grew the business. It wasn't the volume of product that they sold. Right? Is that quality of the culture, both internal and external. That's just like, we're really here for the people. If you wanted to leave the retail floor, you went into training. Period. Right? That was the only way to do it, was to say, I'm going to get trained to do something else.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's like training is the obvious thing. When you look at history, and I love history, the thing that made the difference in both the English Revolution and the American Revolution is when the Americans and the parliamentarians trained their forces. Before that, they were just kind of this chaotic group of men that were kind of, sort of, yeah, we're on the same team.
Right.
After the training, all of a sudden, these are professional soldiers now who know what they're doing. And you see the difference, particularly in the American Revolution, at the Battle of Monmouth Courthouse, where, they have a poor general who at first calls them to retreat, but then George Washington is able to rally the troops and have these men stand up against the most professional trained army in the world at that time and go toe-to-toe with them and snatch a stalemate from the jaws of defeat. Like, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. And it's the same with our employees and our businesses. Right. If you want to be successful, if you want to actually make the transition from, it could be a business, but let's face it, it's like, I want to be very careful that I don't sound offensive here, but like, you're a business, not a corporation. You've given yourself a job, not a retirement plan, right?
Yeah.
If you want to transition out of that organization and have a retirement plan, the only way you're able to do that as a CEO, owner, whatever your role is to train up your successor.
Yep.
Well said.
My favorite metric here, Zach. So love this. What is not on the KPI chart at most organizations that really should be, relative to what you just shared? The percent of critical roles that have a successor identified and ready now, ready 1 to 2 years, right? That's the metric. It's called organizational resiliency. If you're going to have turnover, can you backfill? And what's the overall risk in the company to turnover in critical roles, right? That ought to be on your sheet, and it's not that hard to do. It's not hard to design, to track, and it's not hard to fix, because when you have a gap and you start measuring it, you'd be surprised how low that number is.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So succession planning, coaching the middle as well as coaching the bottom. Are there any other key takeaways that you want people to have in the last couple of minutes that we have here today? Like actionable stuff, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
I think that the most actionable thing people could do relative to chaos, right? To get back to our core point, find a change management model that you like and adopt it, deploy it with intent, right? Like pump the brakes and say, what do I need to communicate? What does the model say? Where are my people on this model? What do they need to hear from me? And give the people what they need, and then listen, right? Get humble, get quiet, get curious, and listen. Let them vent if they need to vent. Ask questions, you give answers, right? Like, get their input. Be a leader, not a manager. Find a model you like. Pin it on your wall, right? Make yourself whatever device you need to bring that to reality. But if you want to solve the chaos as a leader, it starts with you, your behavior, your mindset, and conduct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for your insight, your input, your ideas, and most of all the actionable stuff. I think the only way to deal with chaos is actually to embrace it, right? How to figure out how to get into the current so that you're not swimming against it, and like turn it into something manageable by first off admitting it's there, and then secondly working along with it. And I think that stuff that you unpacked, Zach, between team and group, that's a really key component as well, and it can't be communicated enough.
Yeah, good point.
So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think personally for me, in terms of leadership, that's when things make the biggest change, is when everyone feels like their unique traits are valued and embraced on the team, and not just tolerated. That's really when you start seeing synergies, and people taking ownership, because all of a sudden they've recognized that's what you want them to do. But it's a scary thing for a leader to do, because it means that you have to let go of control.
Right.
Yeah. And trust your people.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day. For those of you who are catching this later than live, comments, ideas, feedback helps everyone, and we appreciate your input too.